This video will illustrate how to perform a basic exclusion. Now, sometimes, especially with new customers, we get calls about a rat infestation. If you understand the biology of rats, you know they are neophobic, meaning they are afraid of new things. They really like using the same pathways, going to the same food source and the same water source and hanging out in the exact same spot day after day after day. This can be used against them in order to find where they are coming from. If you follow rodent activity, you'll notice they get rub marks on pipes and around corners that they frequent. You'll also notice that in and out of holes, there will be chew marks around the hole, and there will be this darkened, sooty looking, almost ashen color rub marks. That's their body oils from their hair mixed with their urine that they're constantly urinating, even with blood from pregnancy, that are called rub marks. Anyway, if you follow all of the rat pathways in a house or in an attic or in a shed, oftentimes you will find an epicenter of activity will be a hole in back, or else there will be an area where there was a copper repipe performed, and the small hole that surrounded the pipe will get enlarged by the rats. I'm going to show you how to recognize when the rats you hear in your attic are coming from another part of the house. Now, you got to inspect the house all around. Look in the eaves, look next to the chimneys, look in anywhere where I can fit my thumb. Mice can fit into a space as big as a pinky. Rats, especially roof rats, can fit in a space as big as a thumb. In this case, we found that the air conditioning guy, when he installed the AC and a couple of the other utilities here, actually just punched a hole in what used to be the screen meant to hold this little garage vent shut. Now the rats are getting in. How can you tell? Because you see all of those rub marks where it gets dirty. That's actually their body oils of their fur and also blood. You can see a little bit of the footprints of the rats right there, and that's a telltale sign right there. There's big poop. If you look in the corner back there, there's a big poop also. Whatever it is, there's generally a hole that's been chewed or some kind of structural flaw that has been taken advantage of in order for the rats to invade and infest the structure. And unless that hole is covered up somehow or interrupted somehow, they're going to keep using it day after day after day, getting it grimier and grimier and dirtier and dirtier. So one of the ways that you can abate the infestation and an IPM approach to actually getting rid of those rats is to simply seal that hole. Yes, you're going to want to trap whatever live rats you can. Yes, if you cannot trap them, you may want to use baits. But the most effective way of keeping a rodent out of a shed, out of an attic, or out of a living space is to simply exclude that rat out of the area. And exclusion literally is the fancy way of saying we are going to seal up the holes that the rats are using to come in. So in order to perform a basic exclusion, you're going to need several things. First, you're going to need generally 1/4-inch galvanized hardware cloth. This is not chicken wire. Chicken wire has octagonal or pentagonal holes that are large enough for a rat to penetrate. A mouse can get through a crack as thin as 1/4 of an inch. A rat can flatten its body and crawl through a crack as thin as 1/2 an inch. So you have to make sure that whatever material you're using it fits the parameters of the rodent you're trying to exclude. If you're trying to keep out rats and mice, you want to make sure that you use 1/4-inch galvanized hardware cloth, okay? This can be purchased at Home Depot in rolls that are generally anywhere between 18 inches and 36 inches wide. In order to cut and shape and form that galvanized hardware cloth, you need good solid tin snips. We recommend the red-handled Weiss snips, however you can use others if you are comfortable with them. And then I like using a staple gun in order to attach the hardware cloth to the walls. However, sometimes you have to use screws and other types of attachment materials. But generally, a staple gun I find is the fastest. The basic materials are the galvanized hardware cloth, the staple gun and staples, okay, and the tin snips used to form the galvanized hardware cloth. Some purists like also wedging copper meshing behind the galvanized hardware cloth, but the truth is that oftentimes is not necessary. We do carry copper meshing if you want to use it. It's oftentimes called stuffing, but that's not necessary. So really quickly, the way you perform a basic exclusion is first you identify the hole that the rodents are coming through. Then what you do is you kind of figure out how can we cover this hole in the nicest, most efficient looking way possible? So what you'll do is you'll actually cut out with your tin snips a piece of galvanized hardware cloth, and then you will bend it so that it fits in and around the area that needs to be excluded. Sometimes this will take multiple pieces of galvanized hardware cloth. However, as you get more efficient and experienced at this, you'll know how to make them with less material and more effectively. This is a little bit of an art, but you will get better. Then once you've created that piece of galvanized hardware cloth, you need to secure it to the area that's getting excluded. In this video, you can see there was a garage in Saugus in which the customers were having bad rats inside the garage. They kept looking to see what the source of the rats was coming from until finally I identified a hole that had been compromised, a ventilation shaft that had been compromised by a pipe. So there was a hole in the protective cover that allowed rats to come and go as they please. If somebody's complaining about rats in the attic, you need to check entry places, especially where the air conditioning ducts and the wiring goes up into the attic. You also need to check where Time Warner cable guys or Dish Network guys have installed dishes recently. Oftentimes they get lazy and they'll puncture holes in the ventilation covers to run their wires through, but those holes are oftentimes easy for rats to penetrate, or they will simply enlarge them by chewing around them. In those cases, you need to find a good, durable material to seal those shut. Generally, this is galvanized hardware cloth. In rare occasions, if there's a difficult to access area that we can see, you can use mortar as well. If you mix mortar up in a very dry ball, kind of the size of a softball, you can actually throw it into corners where you know that the rats are coming in from, and it will slowly accumulate until it covers that corner, and when it hardens, you know that rats cannot get through there as well. However, those are extremely rare cases that are generally handled by our most experienced field reps. So once again, if you find an area that is getting infiltrated by rodents, before you place the bait and before you place the snap traps down or whatever other process you're going to engage in, if possible, make sure you perform an exclusion on that area as well to keep the rats from getting through. And the exclusion has to be performed with galvanized hardware cloth because that is one of the few materials that rodents cannot chew through. You can use wood. If there's a piece of wood that can be used to cover a hole, that will have limited success. In the short term, it may work, but in the long term, they might just chew through it. So where possible, use galvanized hardware cloth. Here's a couple of before and after pictures of some of the exclusions that we've performed so you understand the kind of quality and caliber that could be expected of a Unipest employee. If you have any questions, feel free to call me or Craig, and we'll assist you in any exclusion you have going on. Good luck.